Coming up on today's San Francisco 49ers report, how the Niners can beat the Packers and exploit their biggest weakness. San Francisco has a clear edge over Green Bay going into Saturday's divisional round matchup at Levi Stadium. Before we break all of that down and go through some really telling numbers, give me a follow on X. Give me a follow on Instagram if you haven't already done so. Approaching 10,000 followers on X, formerly known as Twitter, of course. And on Instagram, I've been putting out a lot of reels and videos with some Niners short-form content every single day, and the numbers there have been tremendous. So if you want even more content, more coverage, and interact with me, give me a follow on both platforms. It's at Chase_Senior on X and Instagram. The advantage that we speak of, it's the 49ers rushing offense against the Packers rushing defense. That is the area that the San Francisco 49ers have an opportunity to exploit, which the Dallas Cowboys could not do in the wild card round because that offense was predictable, that offense was vanilla. And as soon as the Cowboys fell down early in that game, as they gave up 27 first-half points, they went away from the run, and all of the passing numbers after recess were in garbage time. Trench play. The Packers gave up 200-plus rushing yards in a game 4 times this season. And you think about what the Niners really do well with Kyle Shanahan as the play designer, him scheming up the running game, and the backbone of this offense, it's running the football. And these are the 4 games that the Packers gave up 200-plus rushing yards. To the Falcons, not a good team at all. They gave up 2 Bills, 211 to be exact. Against Detroit, that same number, 211 rushing yards. Against the Pittsburgh Steelers, 205. And against the Giants, 209. Outside of the Detroit Lions here, these teams and these offenses don't really bring anything special to the table. And outside of the Lions and the Steelers, the Giants and Falcons were bad football teams, not playoff contenders at all here in 2023. And the Niners have to feel good about themselves because of their strengths with Christian McCaffrey, with Elijah Mitchell, with Deebo Samuel, who I think you might see a little bit more of, running the ball out of the backfield, and just how Kyle Shanahan is able to scheme up creatively all of these running plays. But it's not just these 4 games. It's not the outlier here. Notable performances for this Green Bay defense this year. They gave up 122 yards in a game, 211 twice as we noted, 145, 205, a $150, 140, 148, 209, and their rushing yards per game, that all averages out to be, throughout the course of the 17-game season, 128 rushing yards per game. That's 28th among 32 teams in the NFL. And Kyle Shanahan's bread and butter, it is running the football and scheming up plays in the running game, led by Christian McCaffrey, who was number 1 in rushing yards this year and number 1 in rushing attempts. The Niners can't go away from that strength or that game plan. And what happens when they're able to have success on the ground? Opens up the pass game for Brock Purdy, and it makes this Niners team so difficult to stop, given all of the weapons and the complexities of this offense. You look at how these 2 teams compare. The Niners rushing offense against the Packers rushing defense. San Francisco's offensive numbers to the left of your screen. Rush play percentage, they ran it the second most times in the NFL. So when I say that this is the strength and the backbone of this Niners offense, you think I was lying? The Niners also 4.8 yards per carry, number 4 in the NFL. Rushing yards per game, San Francisco, number 3, at 140 and a half. And then rushing touchdowns per game, San Francisco at number 2. And then you look at where the Packers rank in those respective categories. Rush play percentage, 26th, 45% of the time. So a lot of teams have found success in running the ball against Green Bay, and in turn, they continue to go to the well. Yards per rush, 24th. Rushing yards per game at 26th. So really, teams understand here that they can identify the weakness on this Packers team, and I think that's what Kyle Shanahan and this offensive coaching staff is going to be able to do and is doing all throughout game preparation this week. And Kyle Shanahan kind of threw some shade toward the Dallas Cowboys. He was asked on Tuesday, when did you start game planning for the Packers? He said, midway point of the second quarter, because that game was such a blowout. What could also come into play for the Niners running the rock here, rain is in the forecast for Saturday. It also could be windy at Levi Stadium. As we know with the weather, it's an inexact science. It can flip on its head, and it can change very drastically. But as of right now, about midweek on Saturday night, looks as though it could be wet. It could be windy. Brock Purdy struggles to throw a wet football and doesn't have a cannon for an arm to drive it in a windstorm either, and that's why the Niners could go back to running the football a lot and continue to tap in to that strength. So Christian McCaffrey against the Packers, thanks to our friends at Prize Picks, the more or less for his rushing yards is 90.5. Do you like the more or do you like the less? Either type M or L. I'm smashing the more for Christian McCaffrey because he's healthy off that calf injury, 100%, returned to practice on Tuesday, got a week of rest coming off that Week 18 game in addition to the bye, and I think he's ready to go off against Green Bay. More on this here in a moment, but first, today's 49ers Report is sponsored by Prize Picks. A $100 deposit match if you go to prizepicks.com/CLNS. Daily fantasy sports made easy and the largest independently run daily fantasy sports app in North America. You pick 2 or more players. You choose more or less on their projected stats. And I like the more for McCaffrey at 90.5. But some other games that are of interest and other performers of interest in the divisional round. I like the Buffalo Bills to get to the AFC Championship game in beating the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think that Josh Allen is going to play well in what is going to be, believe it or not, Patrick Mahomes' first road playoff game of his career. So I like the more for Josh Allen at 237.5. Dalton Schultz, former Cowboy, now with the Texans, the best team in Texas, more than 36.5 receiving yards. And then Aaron Jones, he's gone off for 100 or more rushing yards in 4 consecutive games. I don't think the Niners give up more than 73.5 rushing yards to Aaron Jones because they know the importance of stopping the run. Daily fantasy sports made easy. You pick 2 or more players. You choose more or less on their projected stats. It's prizepicks.com/CLNS. There's another example of the Niners running it a ton and having a lot of success against this Green Bay organization. You think back to the 2019 NFC Championship game when San Francisco straight up dominated en route to the Super Bowl. The Niners, led by Kyle Shanahan and Raheem Mostert, ran 42 times for 285 yards, and Raheem Mostert ran for more than 200 and had 4 touchdowns. I understand, Chase, that was all the way back in 2019. That was a long time ago. Yes, but as we know and as we just broke down, the Packers still struggle against the run. So the Niners, there's no reason to not run the football and run it a lot. And how about Mostert that day at Levi Stadium? The game was pretty much over at halftime. Aaron Rodgers threw 2 interceptions, and Green Bay could just not stop that Niners rushing attack. Just a historic performance for Mostert, one of the best in the history of the Niners in the playoffs. 29 carries, 220 yards, 7.5 yards per tote with those 4 aforementioned touchdowns. And Mostert, he's not the player that Christian McCaffrey is. McCaffrey has balance, explosion, speed, acceleration. He can also be a threat in catching the football as well. Had more than 2,000 all-purpose yards and 21 touchdowns. I'm expecting a big game for McCaffrey in this one. And what makes this Niners team this season more dangerous than that Niners team during that great Super Bowl run? Not only is Christian McCaffrey better than Raheem Mostert, not only is this team, I think, better than that 2019 team. At the most important position, Brock Purdy is so much better than Jimmy Garoppolo. So you establish this run, and Brock Purdy is going to be able to have an open field, hopefully, to be able to sling it and make big plays through the aerial attack. Brian Baldinger is an NFL analyst that I really trust, and I thought he made a really good point on 95.7 The Game in San Francisco. I've gone on that radio station a couple of times. It's about the 49ers and how they execute, Baldy said. I don't care what the Packers do. The Packers came to town before, and the Niners ran the ball right down their throats a couple of years ago. It's a lot of the same types of people. And that's why I'm confident in this Niners team to get a win. I don't think that this game is going to be a blowout like that 2019 NFC Championship game, but I think the identity of this game is going to be San Francisco running the ball very similarly to how they ran the ball back in 2019. So if you want Kyle Shanahan to call a lot of running plays, type RTB for run the ball. Spam it as many times as you want. Have some fun with it down in the comment section. And as always, thanks for tuning into the show.